Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our BC podcast. This episode is an extended version of the testimony of Tony and Hannah Hayner that we shared at our Mother's Day service. We hope you enjoy their story.
My name's Tony. This is Hannah. We have two little boys, Jackson and Lincoln, and Selah. We started coming to the Oconomowoc campus pretty soon after it started, so a little over 2.5 years ago. Yeah, so Jackson is our oldest. Obviously, he's 12. He is quite the intellect. He's smart, very funny. He thinks he's the realist. So whenever we need to make a really important decision, we ask him. Lincoln is our wild card. It wouldn't surprise us if we got a call from the school 5 days a week, but usually not anything bad. Just kind of, he decided it was a good idea to make his way to the roof of the school or something.
Nothing bad.
Yeah.
He's 7.
Yeah, he's 7.
So we were talking about it last night, and I was remembering that back even before I got pregnant with Jackson, and he was born in 2009, someone said the name Selah, and I just felt like something inside of me was like, yes. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but so it was kind of like from then on, I just had this knowing, like that's gonna be our girl's name. I went back and looked at a journal, and in 2012 I wrote down about how God gave me the middle name. Her name's Selah Truth, and Selah, it has a few different meanings, but one of the meanings is like to stop and listen, or to pause and ponder, and I felt like just truth is such an important thing in this world. We're just surrounded by so much information. And so to be able to stop and listen to truth is going to be such an important thing for her life. And so, so God gave us this name, so many years ago. And then we didn't have a girl, and we weren't at all disappointed about that. And so we were, we spent those next years just kind of, just living life with the boys and enjoying it. And I think, in the back of our heads, like still holding on to the name Selah, and okay, what's this going to look like? So we were living on the East Coast, and we were feeling like, okay, it's probably time. We had adoption on our hearts for years, and just felt a conviction from the Bible and from God about it. And so we prayed about it, and we just thought, okay, maybe we should take our first steps toward adoption. And but Tony's job, he was supposed to be relocated. And so we tried to start the process when we lived there, and we were told, you should not start it now because, the laws are different from state to state. And so if you do have to move, then everything you go through now would just be wasted. So you should wait. So we waited. And then when we found out we were moving to Wisconsin, we went on a house hunting trip, and we called the adoption agency and asked them, what would be our first steps? And they said, you need to go to an information meeting, and we are actually having that tonight. And so we said, okay, we'll be there. And so we went, and that's when we met Alyssa and Sawbridge Church. And so we started the process right then and there. And then we moved here and just kind of kept going with it. But that part did feel like a long wait. We were on the waiting list for a while, and we were not chosen by any birth moms. The birth mom can choose different families to meet, and we weren't chosen by anyone.
I would say the waiting started actually earlier than when we actually started the process. About 10 years ago, I was changing careers and I went back to school for 4 years. And so during that time, we couldn't start the process. We didn't financially weren't in the place to start the process. And then once so there's 3 or 4 years right there. And then when I graduated from college, took a job in Maryland, it was the type of job where I was traveling a lot. There were other things kind of hindering us from starting the process, as Hannah said. So in 2019, late 2019, we received a text from my dad. Through this whole process, my family, Hannah's family, our extended family, everyone's invested in this thing. And every time we had the conversation, we called her by name. We talked about Selah. So late 2019, my dad sent a text.
He said, "I have a word from God for you. Your New Year's baby Selah is coming." Yeah, so January 2020, our church was doing a fast, a 21-day fast, and we were all excited about it and just wanting to really go deeper with God and pray about some things. And obviously adoption was definitely on our hearts at that point. And so I think it was the last day of the fast. My mom said that God spoke to her at the table while she was drinking her tea out of nowhere and said, "Today's the day that they're going to get a call saying that a birth mom wants to meet them." And so I was at the library and I got a phone call and found out that a birth mom had chosen us that day and wanted to meet us.
I received a text message from Hannah saying, check your email. And so I did, and there was a profile in there, and I read kind of halfway through. I was at work. I read halfway through it and just kind of saw that the pregnancy, there had been some challenges and there was risk for some health issues. And so I actually didn't finish reading the entire email. And Hannah called me, which is she doesn't usually call at work, and she's like, "You got to finish the email."
Because we both agreed it sounded like a pretty scary and risky thing. So we knew, okay, we need to, if we're going to say yes to this one, we have to pray about it and make sure that we're ready for all these risks and just really trust God with it. But the reason I told him, "You got to finish the email right now," is because at the bottom of the email, it says the birth mom would like the baby's name to be Selah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we prayed about it, and of course we sent our email back saying, yes, we are interested. And the social worker got back to us and said, okay, well, your photo book will be shown along with, was it 11 others? 11 other families said yes to this, and I'll get back to you.
And at that point, we were somewhat discouraged because we also found out that one of the families that was considering the adoption was a family member. And generally when that happens, the family member will get the baby. And so not only were we, for lack of better words, competing with 10 or 11 other families, one of them was had a background and history with the birth mother. So I think on a Friday night, we kind of went to bed just not knowing what was going to happen. We hadn't heard anything back. The next morning, Saturday morning, we woke up to a text saying, the birth mother wants to meet you. Can you come to the hospital? And so we jumped up, got the boys ready, took the boys over, Pastor Tyler and Alyssa's house, and we're off to the hospital to meet this birth mother. So when we got to the hospital, the social worker said that we should share. We weren't sure if we were going to share the name Selah, like that. We had that. We kind of felt like it might be weird, and seem like we're pushing her if we say this is the name that we want. So we were unsure, but the social worker said we should definitely bring it up. So we went in, we met the birth mom, and kind of hit it off right away. She was obviously very pregnant in bed, but there was an instant connection. We kind of just, it wasn't really what I expected. It was more like, what's your name? What's your story? You know, what food do you like? It wasn't very intensive meeting. It felt very natural. And then we got to the point when the social worker said, hey, you know, she kind of led the story with, hey, what were you guys talking about the name?
So the social worker said to the birth mom, did you want to talk to the family about the name that you were hoping for? And so she kind of timidly said to us, so I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I was kind of hoping that the baby's name could be Selah. And we just had these big smiles on our faces. And we were like, well, we have something to tell you too. And so we were able to tell her the story about how, you know, for all these years we've prayed about the name Selah and for a baby girl. And I showed her the text from Tony's dad so that she didn't think I was making it up. And she's like, I have goosebumps all over. And then she lifted up a little corner of her shirt and she had the name Selah tattooed on her side with a dove and an olive branch. And she said, I've had this for years. So just knowing that, you know, this little girl has been planned for years and years.
Yeah, we told her, because obviously now, you know, it's like a can of worms. We started telling her all the different times that we had talked about the name and what it meant to us. When we moved to the area, we were painting what would be Selah's room, and my dad wrote Selah on the wall. So yeah, at that point it was kind of just undeniable, the presence of God in the room, the peace that came over us, and I think her too, because as you can imagine, it's she's handing off her blood, and despite what circumstances she's come through and endured, you need peace to do that. And
yeah, and she said, I thought this was going to be the hardest day of my life, but it ended up being just the best, and I feel so much peace instead. And so we all prayed together, and it was just such a beautiful time. And she said, you know, even though she had a family member who said she could take the baby, she just knew inside that she needed to meet us. And out of all the families that she looked at, and that she and her mom looked at all the books separately, and she said, out of all the books, both of us came back to each other and we both said we have to meet this family.
You know, we left the hospital that day after meeting the birth mother. That was a Saturday. We still were unsure. The other family member was still very close and involved, and potentially was going to take raise Selah. But we went home, we prayed. I stayed up, I think, all night painting and getting ready, kind of nesting. And then the following night, we got a phone call from the social worker saying, hey, Rebecca wants to talk to both of you. And she called us and said, hey, I want you to raise the baby. And so the next day was Monday, and that night Selah was born. It was pretty powerful. We were able to go to the hospital. We were put in a room right next to the birth mother. We met the entire family. As you can imagine, everyone was at the hospital, the grandparents, the mother, siblings, aunts, uncles. It was so strange, but also very, they were super welcoming. It's something that always stuck in my mind as just being so natural, something that could have been awkward, and it ended up being really natural, and so it was a powerful thing. So she was born that night, and we met her briefly. We wanted to kind of be respectful of the birth mom and give her that time. But they were very anxious, the whole family, including the birth mom, to get us in there. Selah's birthday is January 27th. It was a Monday, and we were able to meet her obviously that night. But as of Tuesday, the next night, and the rest of the week, Hannah and I stayed at the hospital. Well, we stayed all week. We just switched on and off. And as of Tuesday, they brought Selah to us. They would, she was sleeping in the room with us. We were feeding her, changing her diapers. I mean, it's wild because less than 72 hours prior to that, we didn't even know if we were in the, we were finding out that we'd been selected, and now we had the baby. Essentially, the doctor would say, we grade her on a scale from 0 to 10, and normally a baby with her background, with the biological mother's background, would scale on the high end, which would mean she would be at risk. And every doctor we spoke to during that first 48 hours said that they were going to have to keep her. She would be in long-term care. She scored a 0 every day of the week, and they checked her every 6 hours, I believe.
Which is the best.
Which is the best. Like 0 is perfectly healthy, no prior conditions, nothing. She was perfectly healthy, and this was not what the doctors expected. It wasn't what we expected when we said yes. And so she was born that Monday the 27th, and we brought her home Friday. Actually, this is an interesting part of the story. We brought her home beginning of February. And as everyone knows, that next month is when COVID lockdown and the quarantine started. Because of that, it put a wrinkle in our adoption process. We were supposed to essentially take legal. We were legal guardians of her, but we weren't officially her adopted parents. Not for 3 months. It wasn't supposed to be for 3 months, but because of COVID, what should have happened in May the adoption day didn't happen until August 28th. Mm-hmm. I woke up August 28th, just kind of taking it all in, like this was going to be the day that it was going to be finalized. And the history behind, we had to actually endure some pretty hard stuff to get here. And not just the adoption, but there were ups and downs and failures and successes and questions that were all culminating to this day, really. And so I woke up just kind of overwhelmed by that. And again, it was August 28th, 8:28. I go to get coffee for Hannah's parents, for us. And so I'm driving to go get coffee. On my way back, the scripture of the day pops up, and it is Romans 8:28, which says that he works all things together for good for those that love him. So it's August 28th. The scripture of the day is 8:28, Romans 8:28. And there's actually, Pastor Tyler gave us a plaque for her room that day that says Selah Truth Hayner, and it says 8/28, 2020. So just kind of another powerful part of the story that for me specifically just felt like I was he was just over communicating. We've left out so many details, points of failure, points of frustration, all these different things that could have discouraged us from at one point we were thinking about moving to Florida. We had different job offers, and all of that had to be worked out in a timely way that we would be here in Wisconsin, for us, pretty far away from our families, kind of taking a risk to put ourselves out here. Mm-hmm. And if we hadn't gone through that to get here, we would have never found Selah. And And so, yeah, timing, it never feels right. It never, a lot of times, I think for me especially, I'm impatient. But in this case specifically, it's so hard. It's impossible to look back and see all the things we went through to get here and not see the hand of God in it. Even when we look at points of failure, those failures had to happen for us to get here. So.
Mm-hmm. And then one more thing would be, so during the fast, I was following a Bible plan, and I ended up reading this story about Noah, and I actually was having it read to me while I was getting ready. And as soon as the part where it said the dove and the olive branch, something in me was like, stop. Like, I have to dive into that more. There's something on that. And so I stopped it and I had it read again. And then later I kind of just like got my Bible and studied about it. But I still didn't really know why, why am I reading this part? And then when we met the birth mom and she showed us her tattoo, it had the dove and the olive branch on her tattoo. And she talked about, Noah and the promises of God and everything. And so that's been part of our story too, just like clinging to the promises of God. And we talk about it with her. And then it was cool because after Selah was born, I went back to the story and it said, so she was born on the 27th. And in the story, it says, on the 27th day of the month, the land was dried up and they were allowed to leave the ark. And then God gave them the rainbow and the promise. And it also said, be fruitful and multiply and let this be a covenant for you and your descendants. And so it's kind of like, okay. So, and then she's born on the 27th, just like you talked about in the story. So I would just say that through this process, one thing I've really learned a lot about is being able to just say, God, I trust you, I trust your timing. I trust that you are good. Tony and I both had times of just saying like, okay, God, we believe that you're going to do this. We believe that you have a plan for us. And so even when it didn't seem like anything was happening, it just being able to declare in faith, God, we believe that you have a plan for us. We believe that your plan for us is good. We choose you. And that was just such an amazing thing, because it was almost like as we declared in faith something that wasn't happening in the natural realm, it was almost like we could feel him coming up beside us and just like arming us with the strength for it. I think just choosing God in those moments when you're not sure what's happening and you're not sure if it's going to turn out in the way that you hoped, just speaking out in faith and letting God do the rest, and just choosing to believe that he knows way better than we do. And there's just something so powerful about that. So there's a verse in the Bible that talks about how we can have perfect peace when we put our trust in God. And there were definitely moments when we found that to be absolutely true, because, things just felt really unsure and scary. And just being able to stop and again, just say, God, we trust you. And just to know that even if the circumstances didn't change, that his perfect peace that's unexplainable can just come over us and just lead us on to the next step.